It's just gone 7 o'clock on a Tuesday evening, the third day of March, the year 2015. My name is Herman, your host for Candid Conversations with CIPC. Once again, we say welcome to the show, an informative show sponsored by the CIPC, purely just for you to get all the information that you require based on how to use their new online system, and also through the generosity of the Commissioner, we get to tackle some of the issues around the operational side of CIPC. It is now almost a minute, so I've been talking a minute already, so let me just welcome the team once again. Tonight we're joined by Nabila, our editor for Small Business Connect. We'll say hello to her in just a little bit. But as always, Commissioner, good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Herman.
Looking forward to your company once again. And our special guest for tonight is Theo van den Berg. Theo, good evening to you and welcome.
Hi, Herman. Thank you for the opportunity. And also hi to Commissioner. Hope this webinar will be excellent tonight.
Awesome. Thank you very much for making the time to join us tonight. As always, we start off by looking back on some of the highlights of the past week. A few questions around the BE registration have been raised, but in a little bit, I will hand over to the Commissioner to share with us, give us some feedbacks around the inquiries that have been made, any information on that, the deregistration process, and of course, as I mentioned, the BEE registration as well. Just to highlight that CIPC is indeed at work. We receive constant communications from the guys that are satisfied with the level of feedback and the work in terms of responding to the questions that they have. This is the CIPC at work. So we've received an email from Renee Weiss. Renee is from a company called, let me just go there quickly, Company Secretarial Department Manager for First Trust SAPTUR Ltd. So a bit of good news there. One happy customer in the bed, Commissioner. So as we start off the show, I'd like to hand over to you. There's a few questions that are coming through already. I'd like to hand over to you to set the scene. We're now on week 5. There've been a few questions that have been tackled, that have been sent through, but also there's some the information that you want to start off with for the show tonight. Over to you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Herman. Yes, I think it's week 5, and we're learning from these shows every day and thinking about how we can engage more fully with people. So I thought I would start this evening by just giving some brief feedback on the deregistrations. And then talk a little bit more about the BE certificates. So I think many practitioners out there might know that we have done final deregistrations. They were done on Sunday at the end of last week and Monday morning this week. We deregistered about just over 270,000 entities, of which 250,000 were closed corporations, and about 22,000 were private companies. So I think we're about to place 600,000 companies and closed corporations into deregistration. That will be done progressively over the next probably 2 years. So those are all the companies that have not been up to date, that have been essentially delinquent in terms of annual returns from 2013 onwards. So from April 2013. These entities that we've deregistered now were entities that were placed in deregistration, I think, at the end of our financial year in 2013. So that's January and February 2013. The lists should be on the website, and we will also do, in the next 2 weeks, we'll arrange a webinar specifically during working hours, specifically on deregistrations. So if anybody has any questions about that. So I also wanted to then just talk a little bit about the BE registration and the certificates, and because we've had quite a few questions about that over the last few weeks, and I wasn't fully able to answer the questions. I know Tando tried to answer some of them last week, but I think I'd like to use this opportunity to give everybody a bit more information. So I have mentioned in the past that CIPC was accredited by DTI. That is in fact not correct. We've not been accredited. We have been mandated by the DTI to provide, very specifically, to provide BE certificates to exempted micro enterprises and to black-owned enterprises, only to be issued from our self-service terminals. I think I've mentioned that before. What I mentioned was that we provide that when you register for your company at a self-service terminal, right at the end, you are given the option to apply for BE certificates. And you, at that point, the directors who are registering the enterprise, because at self-service terminals, this is only provided to directors, not to intermediaries at this stage, anyway. So, lost my train of thought. Sorry. So at the end of the registration process, you then apply for the BE certificate. The same process is also followed for annual returns. So when you submit at a self-service terminal your annual return, you can get your BE certificate. You can apply for it there. We rely on the directors, the persons who are actually filing the annual return, to submit information. So I think Theo asked previously about differences between the directors and the shareholders, because a BE certificate is dependent on shareholding. So it's the shareholders, it's the persons, directors that are present. They complete the information for the shareholders, essentially. And what these certificates are valid for 1 year. So what we do on annual returns is we do verify. We would only issue a certificate if the entity earns less than 10 million rand. So we've actually issued quite a few. Until the end of December, we had only issued about 300 certificates, but in January and February we've issued over 2,000. So the uptake seems to be increasing. We are exploring with DTI whether or not we can extend this at the moment through the website, and they will certainly consider that. But I think at this stage it's really only available to entrepreneurs because we are able to verify their identity, and that was the basis for DTI's approval. And of course, should we make this self-service technology available, I think at that stage intermediaries would be able to use these same services for their clients. So that's at a very high level what I wanted to go through on BE certificates, and perhaps people would like to ask some questions about what I've said.
Sure. Thank you very much, the Commissioner. I think at this point, let me try and bring in Theo. I've got a question or two, but let me bring him because he had a few questions to ask around this area. Theo, over to you if you want to ask the Commissioner a few questions.
Yes, thank you, Herman. I just heard what the Commissioner said right now. All right, and these certificates, as they are used now on the CIPC system, is only available for new companies or startup companies. I just actually think of a question that the certificate will only be valid for 1 year. What's going to happen, let's say, for example, next year, when the certificate has expired, and can we resubmit or try to resubmit the certificate by next year? And by next year, the turnover must be actually or you have to confirm the turnover because the turnover can't be less than 10 million rand. How is CIPC going to ask for that? Are they going to ask for financial statements? If so, I think that will actually be a good idea.
Okay, so Sia, we offer the service right now, not just for startups, also for enterprises with a turnover under 10 million rand, because at the moment you can apply for a certificate when you file annual returns at a self-service terminal. So it's only available at self-service terminals. But so what could happen is you could apply for it upon registration, your initial registration, and then of course the following year when you file your annual return at the self-service terminal. As long as your turnover is under 10 million rand, you can use this process.
Great. It's just, but the thing is, how is CIPC gonna know what is their turnover? Because there must be some sort of proof that your turnover is less than 10 million.
Well, you will be submitting annual returns and you disclose your turnover at that point. And what should also be happening over time is that we currently, certain enterprises do need to file financial statements. Of course, not everybody needs to submit financial statements. Some need to submit an abbreviated financial sort of record. And that will obviously need to be added for proof over time. Remember, we're also going to be checking against SARS. So we are going to be looking at the integrity of the information that's been disclosed on the annual return system.
That is actually a good idea, especially if, because you're linked with SARS, to have a look at your income on the SARS system. Because I know some people will take chances to submit the turnover less than 10 million, just to get a BE certificate. So I think it will be best if we can have a look at the turnover against the SARS returns. That would be great.
Okay, I must just say that SARS can't disclose financial information to us unless the companies have actually agreed to share it with us. So if you want to do something fraudulently, there will probably still be opportunity. And we don't have a full scope of powers in this regard. We've agreed with DTI that they still deal with the investigations. But I think over time we'll tighten this up substantially.
100%. That's actually a good idea.
All right.
Just one question I actually had on the BE certificates with regard to the shareholding. I haven't made use of the online BE certificate system. Just a question that I had is, for example, if the shareholder is a trust or an entity, what will happen in that case?
Well, those entities can't deal with self-service terminals at the moment. So what we're offering is a very narrow service in terms of BE certificates, because it's only natural persons that can use the self-service terminals at this stage.
At this stage, only natural persons then?
Yes.
Okay, 100%.
And I think you had a similar question maybe about foreign nationals. Foreign nationals also can't use self-service terminals. So all of those processes need to be dealt with through the website at the moment. And I think you might have seen that we provided for a button on the website on the e-services for BE certificates. But that service hasn't actually been mandated by the DTI yet. So I think now that we have a bit more experience with the self-service terminals, we can engage with them. But we haven't at this stage, so we don't know what kind of feedback they're going to give us on this.
Great, not a problem. I think we can just have a look at it. Then also, if you can just discuss all these questions as well, with the DTI. Hopefully, we can get to the point of it.
Perhaps what would be useful for us, Theo, is to understand from you're an intermediary. What would you be interested in, or what would intermediaries be interested in terms of an offering like this from CIPC? Because it's our understanding that a lot of people provide something similar already. One of the differences is that we don't charge for it at all.
Correct, yes. At this stage, we make use of, or our company makes use of accreditors, that deals with LBE certificates. And they usually ask for these questions, turnover, you need to submit a proof of turnover, and in the case of an entity as a shareholder, what will happen in that case, and stuff like that, So I thought I would just bring this forward. If it might happen, if I have a client and he needs a BE certificate, and I want to do it on the CIPC system, I just want to know how can we deal with that, in that case, for example, if there's an entity as a shareholder, etc.
Okay, but so it would be of value to you if we offered this service on the website?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
Awesome. Thank you very much there, Theo. Is there another question that you want to ask before we move on? Or you okay for now?
I think that's it for now for the BE certificates. If I have any questions, I will just also contact the Commissioner via email.
Awesome. Thank you very much. At this point, I'll come back to you later there, Theo. Commissioner, let me welcome Nabila. We've enabled the poll, and she will chat more about it, because we did a poll last week, and it gave you this and CIPC some incredible feedback on the fly or on the spot from our listeners. So let's try and do that again tonight, and we'll publish the results before we say goodbye tonight. Nabila, are you able to read out the poll there for us?
Hi, good evening, everybody. From the CIPC, if the CIPC does allow intermediary self-service access to the self-service terminal software for fast processing for the individual clients, should the fees intermediaries charge the clients be regulated? So you have two options. You can either click on yes or no.
Cool. So that's the poll.
Hello. Hi.
Yep. Yeah, I was saying the poll is on the right side of the chat area for those that have registered and received the links. It's on the sidebar. Click on poll right next to chat and attendees. You will see the question there, and just give us your response, yes or no, and then later on in the program we'll announce the results there. Another opportunity for you to give your input in addition to the questions that you have been sending through. And talking about the questions, Commissioner, can I start fielding questions, or do you want us to talk about the vision of the CIPC?
I think maybe it's a good idea. It would be a good point just to sketch out a little bit to everybody where we're taking our systems, because I think it's a big question for people, especially for intermediaries, and I know it can be very disconcerting if people don't know what to expect, and we introduce changes quite suddenly sometimes. So, so with your permission, Herman.
You're my boss, so I'll take you. Let's go for it.
Okay.
Over to you there.
And some of these questions have been asked in emails, and Theo was also one of the contributors to those questions. So I think one of the questions I've heard on a number of occasions is, so if our vision is to be electronic, then when are we going to have all these transactions available electronically? And I must say at the outset that our vision is definitely to be 100% electronic. But also, it is not just about having services available on the website. It is about having automated services. Automated services don't require any back office intervention. And so we see a distinction between two types of transactions. The one are those transactions that are high volume transactions that don't require really any intervention from CIPC. If we can make sure that we can do all the checks that, up front. So that's why the biometric verification up front is very important to us, because then we can automate the remainder of the service. So we have those types of services, and then we have services that require a bit more application of mind, for example, where there might be a dispute between two people and where we need to verify that there's actually been compliance with the requirements of the legislation. For example, a director change that's disputed, or the removal of a director, or of a close member of a closed corporation. So those transactions, while they may be electronic in future, will still require some back-end verification from our staff. And so what we're trying to do is distinguish those two types of services. The automated services, where as far as we can integrate them with biometrics, then have the advantage of not requiring any supporting documents. And that is very valuable to us, because then we just get the data and we have some kind of verification about the authenticity of that data. So we don't have to store copies of IDs that we know can be falsified. So that is why it's our vision to essentially extend the self-service type of this technology much more widely in the country, because firstly, then individual business people can access the quicker automated services, and secondly, we can reduce the amount of time that it takes to process, and we're not burdened in the back office with high volume transactions that are really administrative for us in the back office, that don't really require a lot of checking. So currently, we've done an assessment of the number of services, the number of transactions that we have as an organization. And I think people must realize, we always also register cooperatives, trademarks, patents, designs, copyright in films. We do data disclosure. We do investigations. So we have probably about 170 transactions that we offer, services that we offer. And only 13% of those are actually available electronically. And an even smaller component of that is what's automated. So our vision, our strategy for next year is to increase the number of electronic services to 20%, and then to do that incrementally over the next 5 years. I think, we'll probably never as an organization have all transactions 100% electronic, because if you only do 5 transactions in a year, it's not really worthwhile developing an electronic service for that. But all the high volume transactions are going to be offered electronically, and as far as possible are going to be automated. So that's why we've looked at auditor changes, or at the appointment of auditors and the changes to auditors. That is a service I think that will be rolled out in the next month or two. We've also looked at automating parts of the name reservation process. So that will make registration much quicker, especially if one uses the self-service technology. So I think our vision, I just want to affirm that our vision really is to move towards electronic completely. And so that, but not just through the website. I think that's maybe one of the key things, because we want to move to a situation where we receive mostly data. And that's why we need our self-service technology to be fairly widely available throughout the country.
All right. So it's not a case of totally wiping out walk-in centers, for example?
Well, what we believe is that what we need to be able to offer is make the self-service technology quite accessible to people. So a walk-in center would be a center where you can access this technology. So, and then we also realize that a lot of users out there are not comfortable, for example, with a website. That's why they, in the first place, they go to an intermediary. We've been quite amazed at the uptake of the self-service centers that we have, the two in Johannesburg and Pretoria, because in 2014, about I think I said 26,000, it's probably actually closer to 24,000, but almost 10% of the companies that were registered in 1 year came from self-service terminals in two centers. So there clearly is a big demand for this kind of service, and not just for, you know, for the assistance. And I think that's what intermediaries would be providing and are providing. They are providing a face, in a sense, and they guide people through these transactions, obviously by doing it for them. But what we're hoping is that through the self-service technology, they'll be able to guide them through it in a similar way, I suppose, to the way we are doing it at our self-service centers at the moment. So it's not just about the technology then, it's also about the human face and the assistance in processing these transactions.
All right, Commissioner, we're about to field a few questions, but let me just ask you a silly question, if I may. You're not planning on leaving the CIPC soon, are you? I know that might be a personal question, but I'll tell you why I'm asking the question. Because you've laid this vision, and it sounds as if you and a few other senior leaders are almost like the head, the team that's driving the strategy of where you want to take the organization. Should one of you, or maybe let me direct the question to you, should you leave for whatever reason, will the vision still be intact?
Well, I have a little bit more left I have about a year left on my contract. And you know, obviously we're going to bed down this vision over the next year. But it's never about one person, and it can never be about one person. So our whole organizational structure is designed around this model and this vision. So it's taken us quite a long time to refine this vision, and I think, you know, it is a lot of the development from the organization. Self-service terminals were developed internally. The technology that we're talking about has been developed inside the organization. So I think it's quite, this vision is quite firmly embedded in the organization. But, you know, when there's a leadership change, it's always possible that there's a change of direction. Once you've committed to technology, it's not so easy to change it, though. Yeah.
All right, cool. I think I'll leave it at that. Let me do my duties and fielding questions that the listeners and the users have sent through tonight. We'll start off, Commissioner, with one from Richard. He says, "Good evening. Why is the CIPC website not recognizing the new 062 cell C mobile number? I tried updating my cellular number without success. The system keeps telling me 062 number is not a valid number."
Yes, that is the case at the moment. There is a system change that needs to be effected, and my understanding is that it's going to take, unfortunately, another month to accommodate that. So we are aware of this and we're working on it. It's just that we have a systematic way of releasing changes, and this is one of the releases that will be made later in the month.
Okay.
So it's true, we can't currently accept those numbers.
Will then an announcement be made once changes have been made towards the use of different numbers, or can just people try in a month to register or update the details?
I think it's a very good suggestion, Herman, that we actually place a notice on the website at the moment this week, just to indicate that we don't currently take these numbers, but that we will be amending our systems.
Sure.
And what the timeframes are. I think it's a very good suggestion.
Cool. And another question from Norman. I think this is more about integration and working hand in hand with other parastatals. His question goes, why are we not receiving automatic SARS registration documents?
Norman, I think, I'm not sure if I understood your question correctly. I know that there was a problem with the SARS line. It went down, and it's complicated, and I don't know exactly where the problem was, but it was reinstated, so it might just have been a temporary issue. I'll certainly take it back to the team and ask them to look into it, just to make sure that this isn't a persisting problem. Because we have a live link with SARS, and we push data to them, and they have an automated process on their side where they make contact with the clients. So when the line is down, when anything happens, then this process is interrupted.
All right. Looks like my question wasn't so silly after all as I thought, because Sam just came back to us and saying, Commissioner, please renew your contract ASAP.
Thank you, Sam.
All right. Now, another question. I don't know if this is the same, Sam, but it goes, a quick question. What if the directors are not the ones processing annual returns? Say they give a mandate to company secretaries to lodge the annual return. Will it still be possible to obtain the BEE certificate?
At the moment, we can only offer the BEE certificate at a self-service terminal, and a self-service terminal requires the individuals, the directors of the company, to be there. So what as you said, as your question indicates, annual returns are usually filed by other people on behalf of the owners of the business. So at this stage, what would probably be required, unless the DTI changes their approval, is that the clients at least verify that they're the ones submitting the annual return, and then you would do it on their behalf. So if you had the technology, they would have to come in, which I think, you know, those are some of the details we'll need to think through and we'll need to work through as we roll this out, because I think it's not going to be seamless. We're not going to, intermediaries aren't going to be able to offer exactly the same services that we're offering at a self-service terminal at the moment, or if they do, then it will probably mean a change in the way they interact with some of their clients as well.
Awesome. And another question, this is a pretty long one, so I hope I'm not going to lose you somewhere in the middle there, Commissioner. It's from Michelle. It says, I have had 2 non-profit organizations, I think, rejected after having been with CIPC for 3 months and 2 months respectively. The first was rejected because an ID was supposedly missing, but it is in the pack of page 13 and 15, or 13 of 15. The second for supposedly having a no-name reservation, but there was a valid name reservation at the time of submission, and a copy was submitted in the pack as well. I have escalated, and Komoto and Jane have tried to help by forwarding to the relevant people, but I have been waiting since October for one of these companies, and I escalated to incorrect rejection on 11 February, but still not have registered companies. She goes on further saying, no point in lodging any inquiry because they are seldom acknowledged. I don't understand why submissions that are incorrectly rejected by CIPC have to go back to the queue to wait for another 3 months for registration.
Okay, that is quite a long question, and let me just explain. Firstly, when the team built up some backlogs last year, so you know we have different teams working on. We have a new registration team, we We have an annual return team. So they're different teams, and we always talk about these teams. So the registration team built up a backlog for various reasons last year. When they started in January, they focused on dealing with the electronic transactions first. So that's why they're relatively up to date on their electronic transactions. And then they're now focusing on the manual transactions. Unfortunately, they're dealing with what we call mixed dates. So it's not in order, in a particular order. I'm not exactly sure why that is, but what I do know is that they're getting documents in different date orders. So that's why you would have waited for a long time to have your documents dealt with. When the staff work on especially manual transactions, and non-profits are manual transactions, and they're trying to work through the backlogs, unfortunately, I know that we tend to see increased rejection rates or incorrect rejection rates. It is important that you log a query on the query resolution system, because we are now going to become much stricter about how we deal with this. So I think after our communication last week, or our session, our chat last week, where where you did the poll, that was a great experience for us because it gave us instant feedback. The organization, we went back into the organization and we've implemented, or we're going to be implementing very shortly, what we discussed, which is that all the queries, in particular areas where people haven't been able to process their queries, those are going to be closed, and then we're going to ask clients to open current ones that have not been resolved again. So I think, you know, we're going to be starting from a better place in those areas where the volumes have meant that the staff have not, you know, been able to be on top of the queries. When we assess the query resolution system, I can tell you that there are a lot of areas where we have absolutely no problem with query resolution. It might be those areas where they've got a lot of queries, but we are expecting the teams to manage that. So I think we're going to become much more consistent about requiring that once your service delivery standard has been, passed, that people log a query, and you wait for 10 days for those queries. If your query is not resolved within 10 days, you have to escalate it, and that escalation process is either to escalate it to the Ombud, to the Deputy Commissioner, Rory Voller, or to myself. So please log the queries. It's important that we maintain that system and that we hold everybody accountable, but if you're not getting the answer, you do need to escalate it to us. So on these particular matters, if you haven't logged a query, please log a query, but otherwise forward those documents to me. I think that the team should be able to look at it again. I don't know, I'd need to verify. What they need to do is they need to put it back into the queue. But if they're processing faster, then it should go much faster. You won't have to wait another 3 months.
Sorry, Herman, can I just fall in there quickly and ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Commissioner, I've actually realized now on the inquiry system that, especially on name reservations, when I log an inquiry for a name reservation that's not finalized, for example, I've realized that the CIPC doesn't attend to it until the name reservation is finalized. Then they will get back to you and tell you it is resolved. You know, so I think that, or I don't know how does it work, but now I see that they don't respond until the name reservation is resolved. So they will wait the 9 working days or whatever until they get back to you. Can you just maybe explain that, or back on it, please?
Well, I think that's a very interesting point you've raised. I'd need to go back and check. But But I think that's an interesting observation. I don't think that that's applicable in all areas. For example, I know that in annual returns, when the revenue side, people, or even password resets, the respective teams look at their queries and they try and resolve their queries. But I'll go back to the names, people, and we'll investigate it. I think it may be something. It seems to me that it may be something similar in company registration.
Yes, yes. Thank you. I will appreciate it if you can just have a look into that. So I think the inquiry in that way, the inquiry system isn't supposed or isn't working as it is supposed to. If we can just maybe sort that thing out, I will appreciate it.
I think you're raising a very important point, and we just had a discussion about it in the organization earlier today, because we realize that on currently the query resolution or query resolution system is used for all queries, and we've categorized the type of issues that we deal with in three main issues. The one is that people ask for information, and sometimes the query resolution system is used for a question because it's called an inquiry. We also have complaints about service delivery, and those may be the things that you're talking about, Theo. And then lastly, we also have what we call our inquiries about transactions, allocations. So where people want to know what progress has been made. It's not necessarily a complaint. So we are going to go through a system now of reviewing how we address these three types of questions, and provide, for example, on an inquiry about transaction process, what we want to do is introduce a USSD service, which is, I must confess that I don't fully understand it, but it's essentially a cell phone self-service option, so you can then track a particular transaction through that. So I think what we are going to be doing is refining the query resolution system. We are, and I'd like to discuss this maybe in the next chat, Herman, is how we can, what would be useful to, what changes would be useful to the website.
Okay.
Because that's one of the things we need to, we're going to redesign the first page of the website and distinguish it. And we're also looking at reintroducing a call center, as well as a user support helpline as something maybe separate. So I think I'd like to talk about that a little bit next week and get some feedback from everybody.
All right, great. I think those, with your permission, if I can ask a question now, but maybe no, it's fine. I'll leave it for offline. It's regarding promoting the show next week. All right. Is there anything else that you want to touch on there, Commissioner? Because I'm about to bring in, I think Nabila's connection has just gone off. But if I can just remind the listeners of the poll that we've got running, the question says CIPC wishes to make available self-service terminal technology to intermediaries. This will enable faster processing for individual clients. In order to ensure consistency of service, the CIPC is thinking about, or the CIPC is thinking about limiting the fees that may be charged. Should the CIPC limit the fees? That is the question. And how do you take part in the poll? Just simply click on polls on the sidebar, and you've got two options, either yes or a no. And I think in about 10 minutes we'll publish the results. I can tell you where the answer is, but hey, I'll leave it up to you, and we'll check with that in a few minutes time. Commissioner, a question from Renee just came through. It says, is there a possibility that the CIPC can issue a definitive guide on QRS categories and what type of issues each department attends to? This will greatly assist us on what category to select when logging a query.
Okay, I think that's a great suggestion. We'll certainly take that back, and our client engagement unit will look into that. It's a great
All right.
suggestion. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Commissioner. And Renee also goes, there is no category for CCs that have a query relating to the accounting officer. Please can one be created? I think it's similar to the suggestion that was made earlier, unless if I'm missing my mark here.
No, spot on.
Okay, cool. Moving on. I think this area you did touch on 2 weeks ago, the Commissioner, you wanted to do some feedback, which department doesn't respond to queries. Norman, and I saw another name later on, which I lost. Comments about the ombudsman or the ombuds unfortunately not getting back to queries that have been sent through. I don't know if I should ask you that question or just highlight it that it still is a concern for some of the users that the ombuds doesn't respond. I don't know whether it's too many emails or a backlog that he's dealing with.
I think we've taken it under advisement. What we've been looking at is distinguishing on the query system, distinguishing this category we call complaints and service delivery complaints, and then making sure that those then actually, that if after 10 days they're not dealt with, that is automatically escalated to him on the query resolution system. So that's one of the changes we're looking at effecting. It could be that he's just inundated with queries and not able to deal with all of them. But we are looking at that internally in the organization and also assessing the usefulness. I think it's very important to get this kind of feedback from you on how useful is this function in the organization.
Okay, cool. And moving on to another one. Michelle, there is a poll. If you look on the sidebar, if you registered, you should be able to see a sidebar. You click on chat, you click on poll, right at the top right section of your browser. You should be able to see those tabs there. Just click on the ones that says poll and just submit a or yes or no, and we look at those answers in just a little bit. Another question from okay, no, Johnson says my questions are never answered. Well, Johnson, I'm scrolling down and I'm looking for a question. I can't find it. I'll scroll down and hopefully I'll find it. But another question that came through, Commissioner, it was around the electronics view of the drive to be electronic. Sam asked, will CK2As ever be electronic?
CK2As are, just remind me what they are. I think they are electronic at the moment. I might be, because what we've done, Sam, is we've integrated, so director and member changes. We've changed, its financial year-end changes are for CCs or for companies. Address changes are for CCs or for companies. So, and I don't know, I know that on the CK forms they've combined a whole lot of functions. What we've done is we've broken them up and combined company and CC transactions in one. So you won't have, if that is your question, if you want to see an electronic CK2 or CK2A form, that is not going to be provided. We've integrated it into our systems.
Commissioner, I think what she's actually saying that on a CK2A you can change the business address and also your accounting officer, and at this stage you can, I don't believe you can change the accounting officer online. You have to file a manual CK2A document.
That's correct, and as soon as, it's the same as with an auditor. So as soon as we release the auditor changes, and I'll have to check with Tando, but I think that the accounting officers would be included in that change as well.
Okay, Theo, I think the Commissioner needs to respond. I don't know if you...
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Johnson was complaining earlier on. He's got two questions there. The other one says, well, I think the statement, I'm still surprised why the standard set for transactions are not followed. And then he carries on to say, is it normal to register a company and after a month there is no response?
Okay, so let me answer that. Johnson, the service delivery standards are very important. They're very important in the organization, and we introduced them in 2012. We have meetings at the moment every 2 weeks, and I think it's now going to change to every month, where we monitor where we are in terms of our turnaround times on these standards. So I think what's happened every year when there's a change, internally or a system change, it always throws off the ability of the staff to meet those standards. But that is what we hold everybody to, the meeting of the standards. So they are extremely important. They are also a good reference point for you externally, because you make the statement that we're not meeting our standards. So the standards are important, and what we're in fact going to be doing this year is we're going to be auditing all the standards. So that's independent verification and auditing of standards. It's not normal for you to have to wait for more than a month for an electronically lodged standard company. So if your company has not been registered or you haven't had any feedback, there are two things. Either it's been rejected, or you didn't receive a notification that it's been processed. That could be because you haven't given us a correct email address in your customer code. So in order to check whether your company registration has been completed, go to e-services. That's on the website. It's the click. You click in the top right-hand corner on online transacting, and then it will take you on e-services. It give you the option to look at transaction status, and alternatively, if it says that it's been processed, then go to documents and disclosures, certificates and disclosures, and you would actually be able to download your documents if you are the director of that company. If you're registering for somebody else, then they are the ones that can download their MOIs. I think you can download the certificate, but they must download their MOI documents. Okay, so if a month has passed and it's just not been processed, then you need to log a query on the query resolution system and follow our process.
Awesome. And 8 minutes before we say goodbye, another question from Richard. Commissioner says, evening once again. I lodged COR 39 on the 22nd of Jan, and it was returned 2 weeks later unsuccessful without reasonable valid reasons. I then filed an inquiry on CIPC website and still waiting for feedback. I tried the call center without success. That's a question from Richard.
Richard, our process is clear. If the service delivery standard has been passed, you need to log a query on the system, which you've done. If you don't get a response within 10 working days, you escalate it to the next level. The next level means sending an email either to the Ombud or to myself.
All right. I will share a bit about that myself, Commissioner. The same thing happened to me in 2012. I sent an email and queries were resolved. We're trading with the name as it is right now. So, Richard, I think you should just escalate it, and hopefully you will get your query resolved there. Let me try and get another question quickly there, Commissioner.
Herman, can I answer one that I saw on the chat from Michelle Lingham about a trademark? This is a trademark question, but I think it's important that we answer it. Michelle, you will find on our website all the contact details for the trademarks department. They answer their calls and they also answer email queries. So you can contact them. They take great pride in responding to queries, and you could also log a query on the query resolution system, and they will come back to you. They clear their queues every day.
All right, there you go. That's the response from the Commissioner. I'm trying to look for another question there. Joshua Ndlovu is also not happy. He says, I'm not asking the Commissioner a question. scrolling through these as much as I can. Um, oh, there we go. There, I found it, Commissioner. Let me just ask it quickly. It says, what documents do I need to complete for a trust to acquire a CC that has not been converted yet? I think those are available from the website. I can tell you that.
A trust acquiring a CC, but that is a change of member. That is a manual document, so it's a CK2 document that you need to be that needs to be completed, because presumably there's a change of member. So I think the conversion doesn't matter. It's just it's because the electronic system doesn't allow you, or is not able to deal with foreign members or directors or with trusts, juristic persons. That's still a manual process, so you need to submit a manual document.
All right. I'm trying to look through the chat and see if we can publish it or close it. Let me just go to the super admin and see if I can publish it. But in the meantime, we've got 4 minutes to go. Theo, let me bring you back in, and I'll try and bring back Nabila. Your final thoughts, maybe another last question that you wanted to ask to the Commissioner before we close?
Yes, thank you, Herman. Commissioner, I know we spoken about this last week. Just with regards to the name reservations, at this stage, it doesn't seem that they are catching up on the backlog. Still the same, more or less, 9 to 8 working days. Is there a process that they're going to follow soon to catch up on the backlog?
Yes, Theo. They are definitely on 9 days turnaround time, working days turnaround time, and we have a process. When a team builds up a backlog, then we put in place a sort of a working scheme where that's set targets. So it's my understanding that such a scheme has been implemented for the name reservation team, and I'm sure they'll get out of this situation very quickly. They're one of the teams that really hate having a backlog and always try and be on top of their work. So I think they'll catch up very quickly.
Thank you, Commissioner.
All right, thank you, Theo, and thank you once again for your company tonight. Let me try and bring in Nabila. Nabila, you want to come through, perhaps even share a little bit about the publishing of the questions that we've been tabling on the wiki site.
So I'm not sure whether you're referring to what we do after the show. We'll be compiling all the questions, and we have somebody working with the CIPC to actually answer these questions. Some of the questions we're not able to answer generically, so those are sent on to the CIPC. But we will be sending out more details regarding the user guide via our Facebook page and the email address list that we have. So all the users on this platform this evening, we do have the email addresses they use to register for the show this evening.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Nabila, and thank you very much for your company. I know the internet has been giving you hassles tonight, but glad you're still with us before we say goodbye. Commissioner, before I bring you in to wrap up the show for this week, the results of the poll, the respondents that were on the chat tonight said 64% said yes, and 36% said no. Of course, this was the question around should you as a CPC limit the fees. So that's the response for tonight.
That's great. I think we'll need to ask some follow-up questions, but maybe we can prepare that poll for next week, Herman.
Sure. I think also we can do something on the fly. If you think 7 days is a bit too much, I'll speak to Nabila and ask also Christoph what other bits and pieces we can do in between the shows, perhaps on Twitter or even our Facebook page as well. But your thoughts so far, this is week 5. You shared a bit about the vision of the CIPC, but let me bring you in as we wrap up the 5 weeks that we've been on the show with you as the CIPC.
Sorry, Herman, these are the closing remarks, and I must say, I think the 5 weeks have been very insightful, because it's the first time that we've been able to have this kind of interactive discussion. And I think, you know, what's also been great are these polls, because we can put questions out there and get responses, which has been very helpful. So it also guides us in our thinking, because, you know, we'll take the issues back into the organization. So I think from our perspective, this has been this platform has been great, and the engagement of everybody's been great. And we've certainly taken a lot of things back into the organization. So I just want to thank everybody for the time and for the engagement, and you, of course, for hosting a wonderful show.
Sure, thank you very much for your contribution and also for your time. Just to wrap up with the emails, the Commissioner's email address is aludin@cipc.co.za. Rodzani's email is rmahwasane mahwasane@cipc.co.za. It's also on the chat, and the other one is TLUYABA@cipc.co.za. Thanks a lot to you, Commissioner, and the team at CIPC that have been fielding some of the questions as well. So I look forward to having you back again next week.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Go out there and make a difference and do it. Have yourself a beautiful evening. Bye for now.